What is up? It is day one of this thing we're calling the challenge. This is best name we could come up with for it, the challenge. And that seemed like a good name for us. You could call it the back to school, first ever I go back to school online challenge, but that name's really ridiculous. So we're just calling it the challenge. And man, it has been a good day. I hope you guys have had a good day because I've had a great day watching you respond. Like, hopefully you already got the Devo and you worked through that. Jamie Lee Gainey, shout out to Jamie Lee, who's on our staff at IGO. She wrote that challenge for today. As we wanted to focus today on reflecting and remembering and all those things that God did this summer. And I know, like, this was a different summer than last one for all of us, right? And so you got to do some things again. You got to go back out, do those kinds of things that are so important in the summers. Hopefully you got to go to camp. I know that camps are going on. Some of you were at Super Summer. Shout out, let me know in the comments if you were at Super Summer. M3 camp was going on all over the place. They had several in Texas. They had one up in Oklahoma. And that was going on. I did a camp out in Circle 6, which is out in West Texas at a really nice ranch. And that just, maybe you're at Student Life, maybe your church does their own camp, but like you were at a camp this summer. And that was what we're trying to do today, is reflect on that. Let's remember that, youth camp provides these moments where God just speaks to us. We get away from these distractions. We got our whole group together. There's these intense moments of worship. There's somebody teaching us God's word. We're immersing ourselves in God's word. And, God speaks to us. And we want to remember that. And that devotional today, hopefully you've had time to work through it. I know a lot of you have. You've been posting your stories, showing us how you're working through it. It's been awesome. It's been so cool. And if you haven't, there's still time. You can still do the devotional tonight. But it's all about reflecting. It's all about remembering, which is such an important thing in our Bibles. You see in the Bibles, and you guys worked through that in the devotional today, you saw how God would tell his people over and over that they needed to remember. They needed to remember the works of God. They needed to remember God's faithfulness. They needed to remember what God was doing in their lives. And he cautioned them. He warned them, don't forget. Don't forget. And that sounds crazy, right? But over and over you see in the Bible that they simply forgot. The people would forget what God had done. And so, he had done something amazing, and then they moved on from there, and they wouldn't tell the stories, they wouldn't remember, and they would forget, and the next things would happen, or some challenge would come their way. And instead of looking back and going, no, God was with us last time, they forgot. And when they forgot, they wandered away from him. They wandered away from the truth. They wandered away from what God was doing in their lives because they didn't remember the works of God. And so before we move forward into the next season, before we move forward into the school year and all the things that it's going to bring, and there's a lot of opportunities there, we wanted to take a day to remember. And we wanted to take a day to reflect. And so if you haven't posted something yet about that, we would love to see that. That's just a part of the encouraging one another as we are on this journey together. When you post, hey, here's what God did in my life this summer. I'm choosing to spend a day reflecting and remembering the faithfulness of God, the power of God, the way he worked in my life, the way he spoke to me. We believe that sets you up for what's next because it gives you a foundation. That Psalm 78 is a fantastic psalm about this. And you guys in the devotional, we hit 2 verses in it, but that whole psalm, it's a pretty long psalm, but it's just a bunch of instruction that's kind of centered around this idea of, hey, make sure you tell that next generation because we don't want anybody to forget the works of God. And so God continually tells his people hey, remember the works of God. Tell the children, tell the next generation so that the children of your children will know. And he says basically for 2 things. So they won't forget because apparently we're always in danger of that. And number 2, so they'll set their hope in God. I want you to think about that remembering God's faithfulness this summer to you will help you approach this next season with hope. Because you'll look back and go, yeah, this is what God did. This summer, He did some things in my life to prepare me for the next thing that He's doing in my life. And so we remember that, and it gives us this hope. We know God's with us. We know He's never going to leave us. We know He's always going to guide us through whatever's next. And so some of you have heard that you're a little bit scared about the school year. You're a little nervous. You're a little anxious about it. We did a poll the other day, and we said, tell us how you feel about the school year. And we gave 2 options to select from. And the first one was bruh with a face palm. And the second one was let's go. And I thought let's go was going to kill it. And bruh won. And so if you didn't get to weigh in on the poll, or even if you did, go ahead and give me in the comments like how you feel about the school year. Is it more like, oh, can't believe this, bruh? Or is it let's go? But it doesn't really matter, where we are in that. If we're anxious, if we're nervous, if we're excited, maybe we're all of those things at once. Here's what God is telling us today. If you remember what He did in your life this summer, you spend some time reflecting on that, it'll give you hope for this next season. It'll point you in the right direction. And I see you. I see you, Cade. You're like, let go. Shelby, you're still bruh. That's because you're in Florida, Shelby. And Glory, let's go. That should include cross country. Brooklyn, come on. No, I get it. Summer's awesome. School's coming whether we like it or not. Whether you can't stop it. So we might as well remember what God has done, so it'll set us up for hope as we move forward. And so as we talked about today, this remembering, as you've been posting it, I've seen you've been journaling, you've been writing stuff down. I want you to think about the fact that this remembering that the Bible talks about is a very active thing. It's not that remembering where you're not thinking about something and then something happens and it makes you remember, like you hear a song, like if I hear Fishing in the Dark by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, which is a classic that you should know if you don't know it. Every time I hear that song, I think about my buddies in high school and all the different times we went fishing at night. And like, it just, like, I don't think about that on a daily basis, but I hear that song, it just takes me right back to that moment. Or I hear that, there's another song that was out in the early 90s, and if I hear it now, it reminds me of this time I was at this party, which I wasn't like in the party scene at DBU or anything, but I was at this party with some guys that were off campus, and one of them was trying to ride his motorcycle in the living room of this house. I'm not sure he was in his right mind, but he was trying to ride a motorcycle in the house, and that song was on while he was doing that, which was just another part of the crazy story in that moment. But when I hear that song, it makes me, oh yeah, I remember that crazy night. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about just like you're going along and then something triggers a memory. No, the Bible's saying, remember, like, fight for this, pursue this. Like, this should be an active part of what we're doing. We're trying to remember. And so I don't know how you do that. Hopefully you write stuff down, you journal. One of the challenges of the devotional today was, pull out your notes from summer camp. You're at Super Summer and you had a notebook or M3 or whatever you had, like, pull out that notebook, look at the notes that you took. I mean, why else take notes? And I think you ought to take notes. I think it's an amazing thing to do. You ought to do it every Sunday, not just at youth camp. But why take notes if you're never going to look at it again? I know it helps us remember when we write it down. That's good. But if we really want to remember, every now and then we'll go back and look at what we've learned. And so hopefully you take notes on a regular basis. Maybe you have one of those journaling Bibles and you take notes in the margin, so the next time you're reading that passage, you look back and go, oh yeah, I remember I was taught on this passage this time. This is what I learned. Those are great practices. There's all kinds of different things that we can do to remember. My family, we want to remember family moments, just real practical. So one of the things I started doing for my family a long time ago was making photo books. And so I've got all these photo books from every single year. We make a photo book that kind of helps us remember all the fun stuff, all the great things, all the memories from that year. So this is way back 2007, a photo book of my family. That's Austin, Libby, Glory's got sticking her thumb in Libby's eye. There's Dub. I don't know what Dub's doing. That's our 2007, the cover of our family photo book. And so we have these in our house so we can pull these out and remember them. So we got 2012 was when I had a beard and we were very patriotic apparently in this picture. And that's our photo book that helps us remember all the cool things we experienced in 2012. And then we have 2014 was when we just, every group, every family ought to try to be a band at one point. So we found a train track and held hands or walked down it and we took a picture. So it's like our band picture. We're not a band. We'll never be a band, but that's our band picture. And then all the way up to 2016 when we did the, circle of kids on the cover so you can see all of them. And these photo books are amazing. Like they have so many different pictures in them that we can go back and remember. Oh yeah, I remember that was such a big deal. I remember like Austin was really into Harambe. Give me like, put Harambe in the comments if you remember Harambe or whatever. But like all these photo books, we go through them and those are just ways that we remember. We put something there that's in our house, in our living room all the time so that we can remember. So how do you do that? How do you actively remember the faithfulness of God, the works of God, what he's taught you, what he's done in your life, so that you move forward with hope into whatever is next? This school year, whatever's beyond that for you, how do you do that? And in the Bible, in the devotional, you hopefully you got some time to read that Joshua 4 passage. It's such a cool story. So God had just done something amazing, just absolutely amazing for the people of Israel. They were coming into the promised land and they had to cross the Jordan River, and God allowed them to cross the Jordan River on dry ground. He stopped the water. He's done this before, but it's another amazing picture. That was a whole different generation. He did that with Moses. And now this new generation, as he's bringing them in the promised land, he does the same thing, and he allows them to cross on dry ground. And they're going to the promised land. Everything God's told them is about to happen. And God takes time in Joshua 4 to say, hey, you're going to need to remember this. There's going to be a tendency for you to forget how I got you here and all my faithfulness and all that I've done. So I want you to remember it. And he gave them some specific instructions. You remember he said, I want you to take 12 stones to represent the 12 tribes of Israel, 12 stones from the riverbed. And I want you to pile them up over here. And it's such a cool story because he says, hey, from this point forward, you're going to walk past this point and you're going to have your kids with you, and they're going to look over there and they're going to go, hey, what are all those rocks piled up there for? And every time you see those rocks, and every time somebody asks you, what are those rocks piled up over there for? You're going to get to say, oh, that's where God brought us into the promised land on the dry ground. Like that river was dry so that we could cross, all of us cross into this promised land that God had given us. And so he said, here's a way that you can actively remember what I've done, which is something we're called to do. Pile up these rocks. And let's make sure that we remember every time we pass that way that we'll see that. And so what does that look like for you guys? Like, how do you actively remember? I'd love for you to write that in your comment, like some of the things that you do. Maybe it's journaling, maybe it's, some kind of Bible study group that you're faithful to attend, or, it's somebody in your life, an accountability partner that reminds you, because, man, I need people in my life to remind me of God's faithfulness. When I wander away, when I forget, what are the ways that you see God helping? Like, what are the ways that you remember the faithfulness of God? I would love to hear what that looks like for you. And just so we're clear, I mean, the Bible reading our Bible, studying our Bible, that's that really simple practice. That's the way that we remember. That's the way that we remember who God is and what he's done and how he has approached us and his love for us and his mercy and his grace and all those things. That's where it comes from. Us reading the Bible, we're getting to know God and his character and what he's done, his works, his marvelous deeds. And it's this daily practice of getting into God's word because I'm remembering what he's done for me. And so, man, I'd love to see all the ways that you can do that. I also wanted to kind of take you, I was thinking about this, like, this is, I'm doing this from my house. Can you see the deer? I'm doing this from the house, and I was thinking about how, at our house here in Rockwall, Texas, we've survived some things this last year. We survived the quarantine. Spent a lot of time at this house in quarantine, and we spent the mother of all winter storms happened this year, and God got us through that. That was crazy. That was absolutely crazy, that winter storm. And so I thought, man, this is what God says. If he does something significant, let's pile up some rocks and let's remember it. So I got out here today and I piled up some rocks. I want you to see this. I don't know if you think that that's impressive, but I'm telling you, it was really hot when I did that. And so that's you might think it needed to be a bigger pile, but that's a pretty good pile. I want you to see all the different angles of this. It's pretty significant. Big old pile of rocks. Can you see it? And it's right out here in the patio area. Like, I don't think that's really going to work, I don't think that's going to be inconvenient for the most part. We're going to trip over that, or it's going to, be knocked down or whatever, but that's how they remembered it in ancient times. So let me give you another challenge. You already had a challenge of posting what you're learning as you're reflecting and remembering, but let me give you one more challenge. And I got Glory, my youngest, to do this for me already today. And it's kind of like the pile of rocks thing. I asked her to get one rock. We have a bunch of rocks around our house, and I asked her to get one rock, and I asked her to paint a memory from the summer, something that God spoke to her about, something that God taught her this summer. And Glory she went to Super Summer with me at DBU, and in Blue School, she was in Blue School, so she learned some things about Romans 8:28. So she put that verse on this rock, and it's just a cool little active way of remembering. You don't have to be artistic to do this. You can just write a verse on a rock or something. But I think it'd be a cool thing to do. Like, take that rock. I'm gonna challenge Glory, to take this and put it on her nightstand by her bed, or put it on the sink where she gets ready every morning to go to school. Put it somewhere where it's kind of like that pile of rocks, where every time she sees it, it'll help her to remember God's faithfulness. Romans 8:28, God works all things for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Such a great reminder that no matter what happens, God's got a plan to work it for good. And put that somewhere where it helps you remember what God has done in his faithfulness. And man, hope will come from that for this next season, whatever you go through, whatever you experience in school this year. And we're going to start talking in the next few days about how to really begin to live on mission. But let's do it with a clear picture of what God has done for us that gives us hope as we move forward. So I'm going to challenge you to do something like this. So find a rock somewhere. It doesn't have to be big, it can be really small. Put a word on it. Put a verse on it. Put some kind of memory on it. You can paint it really pretty like Glory did, or just write something on there and then put it somewhere where it causes you to see it and remember it. Maybe you have friends over. Maybe some of you drive cars, you put it in your car, like in your cup holder, and people get in your car and they're like, what is that all about? And all of a sudden you get a chance to tell people about God's faithfulness. You get a chance to tell them exactly what God has done for you and why your hope is always in him. And so here's the last challenge of today. Tomorrow's devotion will start us in a new direction. But if you have a chance to do this rock thing tonight or tomorrow or anytime this week, man, post a picture of it. Use the hashtag IGoChallenge21, tag IGoGlobal. We want to see the pictures of your rocks as the key to remembering God's faithfulness as we move forward. So Man, I'm excited to go back and look at all these comments. And Sammy, when you share your story and listen to other story, man, all those things. You sat around youth camp this summer, a lot of you, and you heard stories of God's faithfulness in other people, right? And it's encouraging. It helps you remember, oh yeah, God's with us, man. He doesn't ever leave us. Jenna, journaling, Bible study, staying in prayer, talking to him, all those basic things, just continually put the truth of who God is and what he's done in front of us. And it's so great. So great. I love the fact that Rebecca said her dad reminds her every day, and she journals because hey, have you done that yet? Like, those are such good things. Journaling, I keep seeing that coming up. Mo Layton says, I ask people to remind me of who Christ is. And the church, we're going to talk so much about the church tomorrow, day 2. But man, when you have other people that you can count on that are walking beside you in this, that are remembering with you and reminding you of who God is in your life, man, that's a good thing. That's why we gather together all the time as a church, at least once a week, for most of us a couple times a week, to sing songs and remember the faithfulness and all those things. It's such an important part of our life following Jesus, is remember who he is and what he's done as we follow him and move forward. So, guys, thanks so much for joining us. If you just jumped on, we're going to replay this. We'll save it. You can still watch it, all the different things. This challenge, man, I'm so excited to see what God does in your life through this challenge, and then through your life as you begin to live on mission this school year. And so, man, it's cool. We have 112 people that have signed up to take the challenge. We had a bunch sign up today. It's not too late. You can tell your friends, send them the link. If you're watching this and you're not in the challenge and you're not getting the devotional sent to you via text, then go to the link in our bio and sign up for it. It's not too late. We'll let you jump in and catch up. And we're going to do this all week. Devotional in the morning, challenges throughout the day, and then a live video with some teaching and training as we kind of embrace this task together. So it's good to see all you guys. I'm excited about what God's going to do. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.